I am an African.
This is the second part of a two-part episode. Be sure to check out the first part in order to get more context. Thank you again for listening.
All right, so we are seeing all of these. We just heard about the losses that South African Airways has been making, Kenya Airways as well. And so all of these new airlines are coming up. But obviously, the big exception is Ethiopian Airlines, as we just were talking about. And, Ethiopian Airlines has one of the widest route networks in the world. I think the top five. It's got 139 aircrafts and 36 on order. And it has strategic hubs with, as you mentioned before about how South African Airways didn't take advantage of hubs in Accra, Ghana. They have strategic hubs in Togo, with Askai Airlines, which is a partnership with ECOWAS. For those that don't know, ECOWAS is the West African sort of political economic region. And it's a very big airline in that region. It has subsidiaries or joint ventures with Zambia Airways, which was just restarted couple of years ago, or a year ago, I think. Malawian Airlines, the Chadian, state-owned airlines. How exactly will this affect the African traveler? Because all of this sounds like sort of corporate stuff, but how exactly, first of all, if you can give us an understanding of why Ethiopian Airlines is doing this, is it good, is it bad, but how exactly is it also going to affect the African traveler?
Well, let's just start looking at Air France KLM type of joint venture. Air France KLM started like this, where they decided that they want to club together all these small little entities airlines that were there and make one big airline. So it was successful. When you move on to America as well, in America, United Airlines was a joint venture between Continental, United, and there were a couple of other airlines that went into that. Delta as well, it was also a couple of other few. But United States is different because it's got different states and so on. But in Africa, you do need air connectivity, and I think it's strategic for what Ethiopian Airlines has done. We haven't got a one strong airline that can reduce the cost of traveling in between Africa. One of the things that are very expensive is to commute or to move from one African country to the other. You pay more than what you could pay when you go to Europe, and it's a fact. And I think one of the good things that Ethiopian Airlines has done was to try and do that. Whether it's effective or not, it's something that we can talk about at the later stage, because these agreements are still new, and these are we're just coming out of the COVID. We're still looking at the prospects of how the economy and the business of aviation is going to look like. And I think it's still early stages at the moment. Right. But I want to go back to the issue that I did not had an opportunity to explain about why the new airlines like your Air Rwanda, Rwandan Air, why are they now? Yes. Once you start investing in creating the airports, building new airports, having a proper infrastructure, it is important that you should have one of your own. And I think I commend them for doing that. But the question is that whether they're going to be profitable, whether they have seen the market, and how the return on investment is going to be realized. I think it's something that we still need to look at. Why have they decided to start as big as they probably some of these airlines have decided to do? For example, if you look at Senegal, they went and bought the A330 900, which is the new ones, very new. In fact, all these airlines.
That's a long haul capacity jet, that one.
That's a long haul, yes. In fact, all these startups, this national airlines, state airlines in the countries that are starting, like your Uganda as well. They have procured the A330 Neo. They operate in that as well. And they also bought the new A220s. They bought few of those. Even some of them, they're on order. Now, it's a vision that they have that the market would look good for them because they are at the end of the day they are situated at the east. When you look at the Air Senegal, they are situated at the west, and that west connectivity into American connectivity, it will play good for them.
Yeah.
But whether people, yes.
But my question always is, you have, there's this famous African philosopher, I'm pretty sure I've heard of him, PLO Lumumba. He was joking about how you have African economies the size of some countries, some companies' marketing budget. So now I was thinking of this. I was thinking, you have the East African community. All of them. Tanzania wants to be the hub. Kenya wants to be the hub. Uganda wants to be the hub. Rwanda wants to be the hub. Even Malawi expanded its airport, rebooted its airline, saying they also want to be the hub. Harare also wants to be the hub. Why can't they just have one? Why can't they just have regional airlines or even a continental airline? Because it seems like aren't they saturating the market? Don't you think it's just sort of like a bit of ego, each of them trying to be the center of Africa in aviation?
I think they are a bit ambitious, and it's a lack of. We are not united in Africa. That's one thing that we should understand. We are not united. Mm-hmm. Kenya Airways and South African Airways, only now they started talking to say Kenya Airways, Rwanda Airways, and South African Airways. They're only talking now, today, as we speak. They started last year sometimes to say, no, we want to create a Pan-African airline that is going to be connecting Africa. But all these times they've been quiet. All this time they've been very much quiet. And how they are going to implement it, they're still not clear. I remember the year-end statement of former president of Kenya, Uhuru Kenyatta. On his statement, he was saying they are going to, at the end of this year, which is 2022, the joint venture between South African Airways and Kenya Airways would have been completed, and there would have been one airline that is operating in between the two countries, and also a possibility of bringing Rwanda airline into the mix. But you must also understand the logic on the Rwanda airline. Rwanda airline has an investor in the form of Qatar Airways in it. Qatar Airways has invested in them. They have given some slots to Qatar Airways to operate on. So they have an investment in that. So when you bring them into the picture again, while they have somebody else in the Middle East who's controlling them, it's something that we could also look at, because there is going to be some sort of clashes there, because Qatar Airways is operating quite extensively within African markets. They have so many slots in South Africa, Cape Town, Johannesburg, even Durban for that matter. So that's what I'm actually looking at. I'm trying to think how this is going to work around, firstly, the customer loyalty programs. South African Airways is on Star Alliance. KQ is, I think it's Sky Team, which is the same alliance with Delta, as well as KLM Air France. Is the same sort of alliance. Now I don't know how is it going to work. And when you look at the both the Ethiopian airline, how Ethiopian airline went about their joint venture, they went and bought the airlines in those countries. They went in there and take over. Now it's a different story in that way. When you take over, it's you now you are in control. But when you do joint venture, there might be a little bit of an issue. But I agree with you. Why did it take so long for them to do this? Why are we not creating one hub and become regional to fit into a big hub? And look at it in a form of how best we can connect the passengers from all over the African continent and the world, for that matter. And I think we've missed an opportunity as African continent to capitalize on that. Kenya Airways had an opportunity to have spoken to Ethiopian airline. You have just mentioned it now. Why didn't they do that? Because they're all in the East. They could have done that. They could have said, listen, Ethiopia, we are here, we are neighbors, let's talk. And we will go talk to our big brother in the south and bring them on board as well. And we then create one big, massive airline, and then we conquer the world. Now, when you have now these guys talking alone, this one talking alone, it becomes everybody for himself, and it's not going to work out. That's what the ultimate Pan-African airline should have or should look like. But in this way, I doubt if these airlines are going to make money. I doubt. I doubt.
Yeah.
I think, yeah, I mean, when you're talking, you kind of touched on a point that I was that I actually a lot of people were actually asking about, which is why it's so expensive to travel in between African countries. I think the cost, it was reported that intra-African flights were up to 45% higher than other regions. 10% is okay, 20% maybe, but 45% is something that's quite significant. So
And even
why?
within African countries, sometimes maybe
Yeah,
South
that's
Africa is the exception.
even within.
Yeah, even within African countries, you'd pay $200 to fly
Yes.
in Zambia, or $150 on a discount. Maybe
Wow.
within the South African domestic market, perhaps because they have
Yeah.
more sort of low cost carriers, but
Yeah.
generally, even within
it's bad in South Africa at the moment. It's bad in South Africa now.
Really?
To travel between the Johannesburg and Cape Town, it
Yeah.
will cost you more than what you could spend to go into Europe. I will
Are
pick
you
up a ticket.
serious?
I'm serious. I'm
No,
serious.
no.
It's bad.
No, hold
It's
on.
bad.
I have to Google this.
You can Google now and just take tomorrow if you want to fly out of Johannesburg. Johannesburg to Cape Town. Just do it for tomorrow, and you will see what I'm talking about. It's very expensive. It's not cheap anymore. Sorry, you can continue.
Yeah, no. The question was just simply why is it so expensive to fly in Africa?
Yeah, so it's expensive to fly in Africa because there is no airlines. That's as simple as that. There is no airlines. One. Two is that the lending fees and in those countries, and the access to infrastructure of maintenance and of service and all those kind of things in Africa, it's always a struggle. I remember just recently, a couple of months ago, South African Airways took off out of Johannesburg with Airbus A330 300 head on to Accra, Ghana. And when they got there, the refueling, it happened that they pumped in the water into the fuel tanks.
Wait, what? They pumped in water into the fuel tanks?
Into the fuel tank.
Oh my goodness.
And it delayed the entire. Some of these things sometimes it's a shock what happened. But anyway, the water was pumped into the tanks, and there was the entire schedule was disrupted, and they had to bring a new plane out of Johannesburg all the way to Accra to pick up the passengers and leave that airplane there to drain the water and sort it out. And then when it was on its way coming back as a ferry, but north of Gaborone, it started losing an engine because of the water that was properly not drained out of that. So these are some of the things that I'm talking about to say it's difficult also in these African countries. Now, we should not look at the issue of passenger volume. We should look at empowering each other. If we have a skill that other country doesn't have, why as a government we not saying, hang on, South Africa, you're a big brother when it comes to these things.
Yeah.
Would you mind to import or to export some of the skills to be based here so that we are able to maintain the aircraft or the fleets with the same standard that you have in Johannesburg, so that we can also have capacity to be trusted, to accept many airlines coming in our country. So most airlines, when they think of flying into those areas, they would think of those kind of things. I remember Kenya Airways, when they were starting flying 787 into Johannesburg, they were flying with, I don't know now, they were flying with their engineer on board.
Wow.
from yes, they were flying into Johannesburg. And I asked one of the engineers at the time, why are you flying with this? And then he said, no, in Africa, that's what we do. But then I said, but in Johannesburg, it should be an exception. I said, no, but it's a system already that we created, and I think we should. The management feel that they should
In Africa,
continue.
that's what we do. It's
Just
almost like saying that, I think there was even a story once at the Kenneth County International Airport in Lusaka when Emirates had an issue. They flew their engineers from Dubai to
Yes.
to Lusaka. So I think it says a lot about maybe the maintenance and operation standards, or maybe just they don't expect that much in terms of skills from African countries.
Possibly. That's why it's Africa to travel between African continents is so expensive. I think it is one of those reasons that we need. But we need to demystify this kind of notion. And it is so wrong and it's dangerous precedents that we are setting for ourselves as Africans. We are professionals. You guys are sitting in London. I'm half of the time in America. Many of us, we are all over the world. We are capable beings that can go and run these things in the same manner that we are trusted when I'm in America. I should be trusted in Africa when I'm in Africa. It shouldn't be other way around. Where the same manner in which an international airline trusts me with their own facility to operate, I should be trusted when I'm in African soil. And why always doubt the ability of Africans when they're on African soil? Why are we looking down on one another when we're supposed to be looking ourselves and say, well, he's capable to do that? Let me make an example. Do you know Air Peace, when it started, it was regarded as even today, it is regarded as the most unsafe airline.
Yeah, I saw a trip report by one of these famous flight YouTubers, Josh Cahill. And and his video of Air Peace, for those that don't know his YouTube channel, if you check that Air Peace review, it is a total disaster. There is no diplomatic way I can put it. It's a total disaster. From scratches of the plane, even pilots from the airline messaged him anonymously to tell him how certain things were not right. From the hours that air attendants get, like they would never normally. I think they're supposed to offload and then they change air attendants, but they were working almost like 3 days straight. And
oh my goodness,
just the standards. But I'm told there's another better airline within Nigeria, but Air Peace has a very bad reputation.
Sorry, someone who's not very who doesn't fly that what's Air Peace?
It's a local. It's a Nigerian airline. It's an international Nigerian airline. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Is it a low cost? I don't know. I haven't utilized.
I don't think it's low. I don't think they intend to be low cost. No.
Yeah. So Air Peace, for me, where I'm sitting as an African, I will never look down on my fellow Africans in whatever capacity that we can talk about. I will never look down on my fellow Africans, because we are Africans, and we are Africans. We always we are always united, and this notion of looking down on one another. And I think those pilots, they were actually very much naughty for them to do that. Much as they may be aggrieved with whatever situation they may be facing with as employees, you have no right to do that. Yeah. You should look at yourself as an African before you can look at your own personal income or whatever situation you may want to push out there. I think they were a little bit out of order. Yeah. And that's what I'm saying. I did send an email to Air Peace at some point and ask them to invite me, because I don't want to go to them without an invitation. I want them to understand that I want to review them so that I can have my African perspective review on them and give it to the international community, because that's what I do. And that's what we should be doing. So some of these kind of things, these are the things that I'm talking about, to say people look down on that. They just, without without even giving Air Peace an opportunity of becoming an airline like any other airline. But you already cast aspersions of doubts and everything else that are there. And we are Africans. We should embrace one another and help one another. If Air Peace lacking somehow, we should come and say, listen, you got to make sure that ECAIO regulations and rules are being compliant. We should be able to do things right, and we should be able to address them as they should. But we should not go out there and tarnish the name of Air Peace. That I think it's even if there's another airline, but we can't be bringing somebody down to take somebody up, because that very same the person that we are taking him up, the same people that brought him up, they're going to bring him down. And that can't be how we should do things. And I think in Africa, we are lacking of that. We are lacking of support. We are lacking of doing things as United Africa. And I think it's high time that we look at how best we can unite Africa without having to look at ourselves and say, I doubt you because it's you, and so on. So the truth is that these airlines that have been startups in Africa, Senegal, Ghana as well, and all those, their plans should be looked at something, airline is not an easy business to run, gentlemen. It's not easy. It's not easy. There's so many things that happens in the airline. You need to have your ducks in a row. If you have to, run specials to lure more customers, it shouldn't be substandard. It should be up to scratch. Air Rwanda does very well, and I have no doubt in their ability to be able to go beyond. But they still have a problem of time. I haven't used their facility as yet, but I have looked at their on time on our systems, and they seem not to be able to cope with that. But I'm sure they will come up right at some stage. They don't seem to be that bad as compared to what I get with the Air Peace.
So before we go to sort of talking about the career-wise, the career aspect of the aviation industry. So what do you think the future of aviation in terms of cost for the passenger would be in Africa? Because right now, when it's still quite common to see that aviation is a middle class thing. In Europe, kids after high school can go on a holiday to Croatia or to Greece. The tickets, sometimes I've heard some of the tickets are costing around 30 euros, 30 pounds, somewhere around there. So when will there be that time when, people who are not necessarily in the middle class or upper class in Africa can say, I'm going on a plane, I'm going to Cape Town and for summer, or when can we see what chances are they for that in the near future?
So the opportunity is going to be there, to be honest. I think it's one must be optimistic about it. We need to be optimistic about it. It's going to be there. The only issue that we currently have is that we don't have an airlines. And I think that is important, that one needs to raise. As soon as we have more airlines operating in most destinations in Africa, I mean, when you look at Europe, for example, you will jump onto EasyJet, Ryanair, and many others that are there operating low-cost carriers. In Africa, we battle to find LCC market. LCC market that exists, they keep on falling off the skies. Even in South Africa, we just had a big one LCC coming down. In fact, not even one. We had Comair, Comair, you heard about Comair with Kulula, the green planes. They're all gone, together with British Airways franchise. They're all gone. You have Mango Airlines, all gone. You have SA Express, all gone. So the percentage of airlines operating, just for example, in South Africa, we lost over 40% of the market share. Now, that 40% has to be consumed by the other airlines. That's why the prices are quite high. Similarly, in Africa, South African Airways is no longer operating in some of the destinations that they used to operate in. Obviously, that allows Ethiopian Airlines and other airlines that are there to capitalize. You then move to the Namibian Airways. Namibian Airlines is gone. It's no longer there. It's not going to be coming back on the market. That is one airline also out of Africa disappearing on the skies. Now, that in itself creates monopoly, and it creates the prices to go high. And the manner in which they are going high, and obviously looking at the issue of the fuel price, from this Russia-Ukraine war, and so on. And these are the issues that creates the prices to be as high as they may be at the moment. But there's going to be a change. There are so many people that are applying to fly, particularly from South Africa into African continent. So many airlines are applying the routes there, and there's going to be more airlines coming and going into Africa as a destinations. But we're still divided. It requires more than a political willingness from our leaders to adjust their sort of hopes that they want to clinch on power and be superpowers, and allow other people to come in and create a sustainable wealth for African continent. Because if you are not able to fly to South Africa, to Cape Town, and enjoy Table Mountain, enjoy Stellenbosch Winery, or go to Kruger National Park, or go to Kenya, Masai Mara, and all those kind of nice places that you can go to, they're affording to go there. Who else to do that? So it means we can only go to Europe, America, and when we are there, we are able to tell the story better, American story better than the Americans themselves, because we are not able to go to South Africa, we are not able to go to Kenya, we are not able to go to
we don't know our own places. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So going into the next question, I think Nathan has the next question.
Oh, okay. Yeah. No, it's just a question for some. As you know, our podcast is mainly targeted towards young people, and some of them may want to become pilots, and things of that nature. However, again, as we did our research, we discovered that flight school is quite expensive, and so I think one question that maybe some of our listeners may have is, why is flight school so expensive? And would you still advise a young person, young African, to pursue a career in becoming an air attendant, pilot, or aeronautical engineer?
The opportunity is there. Firstly, let me start with the flight schools. Flight schools are very expensive.
Yeah,
they are very expensive. The usual flight school should not be sponsored by parents of any child. Even in developed world, in the form of your UK, Europe, move on to America, majority of those that wants to become pilots, they go and get recruited by the Air Force. And the Air Force does the training so that the parents should not bear the cost of the expensive training. Usually, that is the standard. But because in Africa, we don't have an Air Force that is not professionalized, because what most of our Air Force in African continents, it's a profession to be in the military. You go to military as a young boy, you get into military, you retire out of Air Force, or not even Air Force, but military. You retire there. Whereas in other countries, it's not like that. You get recruited from a college or from wherever a university you come from, you tap into that, and then Air Force take you for 3 years, you get trained, you leave an Air Force after 3-4 years or whatever time, and you go out into the market after saving that time with qualification of becoming maybe a pilot, aeronautical engineer, or a medic, or any other thing that you want to be, and you would then qualify to be absorbed in a civil aviation, airlines, and so on.
So the easiest way is through the Air Force then?
It's through the Air Force.
Yeah.
But we don't have the structures in place. That's why the Air Forces in our countries are not able to be professionalized in the manner in which the other countries have done. And I must also point out that the air schools prizes, these prizes are not, they are justified. That's how much these prizes cost. To have an hour with a student flying into a general flying area, you do need a lot of fuel to do that you're going to burn. And it's justified, those costs. Fuel is not cheap. The instructors that does that job.
So it's not like they're rigging the market or anything against young people trying to.
Not really, to be honest. It's expensive. It's really expensive to run a flight training school. It's really expensive. So the costs are really justified at some stage. I'm not sure other countries, but I know for a fact in South Africa, majority of young people that comes from Kenya and many other countries, they always come to South Africa to train here. So I know for a fact here in South Africa, South Africa is not that too expensive when it comes to training. Maybe something that could be much more expensive would be accommodation where the students would be staying. But generally, if you have your own accommodation, you would find it very much reasonable. Whether students should continue training as pilots or whether the future is good for them, well, it depends. If the countries like what we've been talking about are going to start their own airlines and are going to start flying frequently to different destinations, then the future might be bright for them. But if you have a market like South Africa where the airlines that were operating all gone from the radar, and you had so many people losing their jobs, in South Africa, I would say no. I wouldn't advise any child to go into a flying school and spend 1.3 million rands to get the frozen ATPL. I wouldn't advise them to do that. And the reason why I would not advise them to do that is two things. Is that rather get your degree from a university before you invest your money and time in aviation. Because if things doesn't work out for you, you are going to be frustrated more than what you could be.
So
because there wouldn't be. Yes. It's something that you would not, you won't be able to navigate because the skills that are needed there, you need a qualification to be hired somewhere else. If pilot doesn't work for you, you need to have something to fall back on. So I would say go fly, just end at the commercial maybe, but don't go beyond.
These days. Yeah, sorry. So what I'm gathering is sort of like these days, flight school now is such a risk that people are planning like sort of like it's sports, where they say get a degree and then you can do that so that you have something to go back on. Normally you'd hear that for people that are doing athletics or sports, because it's a hit or miss, whether you become the next big star and whether to finance your life. So they advise, to get a degree in accountancy or management, just in case. So it seems that's sort of the strategy that you advise.
Yes, I think it's the same way as the sports people would want to do. I would rather advise the child to go get degree in whatever profession you want to follow and go and fly after that. And even then, when you spend your money, don't go and spend it to beyond commercial. Rather do your commercial subject, get your instrumental ratings, and there. Don't go beyond that, spending from your pocket. Rather become an instructor so that you can redefine yourself and get those hours. Go do a lot of bush pilot if you like.
That would actually be fun. That would actually be fun. Maybe the bush
Yeah,
pilot.
yeah.
Now
Do
that
the bush
about it.
pilots and get a lot of hard landing and different terrains and so on, so that you get your skill refined in such a way that you would like yourself to be in. And whether becoming a cabin crew member, becoming a cabin crew member, it's something that will always be needed out there. Because airlines do hire from all over the world, as long as you are conversant in a certain language that the country requires. If you speak Arabic, you can tap into any airline that speak Arabic. If you speak English, you can tap into any other airline in Middle East that speak English, or you can go to the Caribbean and in many other places. Cabin crew doesn't have a lot of issues as far as hiring is concerned. The problem is the pilots. Engineering, there's not a lot that people can worry about, because half of the engineering students that are training, they get degree, they get honors, they get all those kind of qualifications. So it's more of a qualification more than anything. Once you are qualified, it's unlike pilot. It's a airline will choose whether they want you or not. Whether you are good or not, they will just choose, no, we don't want you. As simple as that. So hence I'm saying, spend your money up to commercial, and then from there, just fly, and you will see where, if you get more than 1,500 hours from those instructing and bush piloting, then that's fine. Any airline that would want to call you for an interview, they can call you. But don't bank on the fact that you will fly in your own country. That should not be in your head at all.
Okay. So that's an excellent way actually to end it on some very, very practical advice.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we have basically covered the infrastructure boom, we've covered the new airlines, the new developments and what's going on, and obviously the candid, almost bespoke advice for what to do if you want to enter the aviation industry. Of course, we are with our consultant slash analyst. Basically, he's a jack of all trades when it comes to African aviation, Mr. Mojapele, and it's Nathan and myself, Zenge Loy. So thank you for coming, Mr. Mojapele.
Thank you so much for having me, and I look forward to engage with a lot of your listeners and your followers on this podcast. And I really wish that we could have more people asking questions so that we can address them. And I will always avail myself to my fellow Africans. I have love for my Africans.
I am an African.